Hello and welcome to We Three Queers,
the podcast where we talk about all things queer.
And I've got a banana.
That's better.
Is that better? All right, great. Now you're interested, aren't you? Am I going to eat it during the podcast or after the podcast? Ooh, tune in to find out. Oh.
We three queers of London are fabulous and feeling ourselves so far. Talking about all things queer and fitting with the theme. And that's enough of that. I'll stop singing now.
Hello and welcome back to We Three Queers. And this week we're getting straight into it, and we're getting all political because why not? It's LGBTQ plus History Month, so which is fantastic. Learn your history, people.
Yes.
But also during this month, the Tory government have decided to bring up the old debate about gendered toilets again, which we have thoughts about. So I know Cyro has a lot of thoughts, so I'll let Cyro start. Go for it.
on the gender toilets debate.
Yeah, we're going straight into it. Come on,
Straight into it.
Hard hit into that.
It's just it's so backwards. The UK, I don't think we realise how behind we are in the rest of the world. And this debate about gender toilets and the safety of our children, it's such bullshit, and it's hate speech, and it's and hate crimes are going up. It's inciting people to feel they're empowered to attack or scrutinize or whatever in the bathrooms when you're just going in there for a piss or a poo. You know, it's a basic human right, and you're now trying to argue and deny us that basic human right of being able to use a toilet that we feel comfortable in. It's so ridiculous. I don't know if you've got any thoughts, Carrot.
It is ridiculous. Yeah, it's come with the rise of the TERF movement, trans exclusion. Oh, okay, I'm here. It's come with the rise of the TERF movement, I think, hasn't it? The trans exclusionary radical feminism, in case you don't know what a TERF is. And I think that obviously we had J.K. Rowling do her essay of just lies last year.
An award.
Which kind of gave, which won an award from the fucking BBC, and then that gave a platform to so many other people to feel like they're speaking out when what they're actually doing is justifying their bigotry by saying that they're being oppressed themselves when they're not, through these lies. And that's what it's kind of all about. And it really does come down pretty much to people using the toilets of their gender. And the big problem with it is, for me and for a lot of people, is it's like TERFs seem to want to divide things by sex, not gender. And if you want to divide things by sex, how do you categorize that without pulling down people's pants and seeing what's inside? And if you want people to not feel like they're being assaulted, then why do you want to look inside their pants and see what's in there? So it's fucking shut up, dog. It's so it's like they want to divide it by sex. So what are we going to have, like XX toilets and XY toilets by like our chromosomes or something? And it's like, how are we going to do that? We're going to have chromosome tests in order to get into the correct toilet. It's just ridiculous. Like, I don't even understand what it is that they're actually trying to campaign for. Like, what are you trying to, because we all want to be safe in our toilets. Everyone does. And I can't understand how, if you're a believer in equality for everyone, which all decent people should be, then why does excluding trans people from going into the toilet where they will be safest make them safe? And how is that equal in any way? And how does that, go on, I'm just ranting.
Sorry, no, I was just going to go in with like, there's also been like there's higher reports of specifically white women persecuting black women bodies because they're not adhering to their standard of femininity. So there's like race becomes an issue in this. The whole white feminist movement is, sorry, my dog's going off now. The whole white feminist movement is rooted in racism, because the idea behind, I'm putting in quotation mark, eugenics, sorry, my dog. Kyra, I know you're angry at TERFs too, but I need to speak, right?
Everyone's dogs are angry at TERFs.
They're going mad. So one of the things that they categorized an evolved civilization was to differentiate between male and female. So they would say that the women, a more evolved civilization would have the women in the kitchen and looking more feminine, and they'd look very different to their male counterparts, and they behave differently. So they used to, and still use this science today, I'm sure many TERFs, and I've seen it, that the black people had less of a standard to differentiate between genders, and therefore were primitive. So there's so many things that are rooted in these TERFs' belief that oppresses not only trans people but black people. It's a way of being in control, of staying in control. That's it. Like these women that feel like they're going to be harmed in some way is complete bullshit. And if you're talking about that, then we need to be talking about toxic masculinity. We need to be talking about what you're teaching your young boys, but you're not. You're talking about trans people, which is like, look, they making up stories that haven't happened to scare people into believing that somehow you're going to be put in harm by someone going to the toilet. It's a joke.
It's like, well, if I was watching an interview with Russell T Davies the other day, who was saying that what's happening with trans people right now, the way that they're being treated and described in the press, and these stories, these made up stories, is exactly what was happening with gay people in the 80s. It's like the story's not changed, like, for some people, and it's vilifying. I think it's stupid. Like, it's such a basic thing, like going to the toilet. Like you said, it's a human right. Everybody has the human right for sanitization, and it's also the fact that they're trying to get rid of gender neutral toilets. It's like there's been no cases of like anybody in gender neutral toilets feeling unsafe, like or being attacked or anything. It's worked, and it works in a lot of places, and why are you targeting them as well? Like, it's all toilets, and I think it comes down to the fact that at the end of the day, it's one of the only rights, not one of the only rights, but one of the only like major rights in their eyes that trans people actually have, or gender non-conforming people actually have. There's so much that trans people are fighting for, like Gender Recognition Act, like on documentations and things like that, they're still fighting for that, but they have this one thing, which is that they can use the toilet of their gender, and so then the TERFs are like, well, no, we'll get rid of this as well. Like, and it's just horrible. Like what's gone on in your life to make you that like vicious of a person to want to take away someone's like basic human right? And also police people as well on, oh, you don't look feminine enough, and it might be a really butch lesbian that like actually, or it might be a femme guy that's going in and like nails and makeup and hair all done and everything. That's not masculine. Get out of the toilet. It's like, who are you to tell me what is masculine, what is feminine? Like, why? Yeah. Because society tells us from the 50s that this is exactly what you should look like, and like you said rightly, Cyro, it's very white centric as well.
Yeah,
comes with history of that sort of thing. I'm going to quickly plug a video that I watched the other day that's really interesting by trans YouTuber Contra Points. Don't know if you've ever heard of her, but she does she did this, it's like an hour and a half long, spoken to the camera like video where and it's funny and fun and clever and silly, but it's also really interesting the way she talks about trying to unpack the TERF psychology. And she talks a lot about how, for example, a butch woman who calls herself, or who is a TERF, they don't call themselves TERFs anymore, but who is a TERF, has campaigned for her whole life to sort of break down the gender binary or the gender norms that's made her feel oppressed, like femininity and ideas of femininity. And so she said, and this I found quite interesting, how you can imagine how then when a trans woman who is coming in with big long hair and high heel shoes and like trying to present femininity in this what is very stereotypical way, as trans women often do or sometimes do, because they have the societal pressure to pass. So you can kind of see how a TERF would be like, that is not what a woman is, you know. How dare you try and define what a woman is by you can't just put on those clothes and say you're a woman because of that. I've spent my whole life campaigning for that to not be what a woman is. So it's interesting how you can think of it from that perspective. It doesn't justify it in any way, but helping to unpack where it's coming from helps you to sort of know how to not fight it, but you know, how to talk about it with them, at least. I think the gender binary, the bottom line is, it oppresses everyone. It oppresses everyone. Cis men, cis women. It oppresses non-binary people. It oppresses trans people. Everyone is oppressed by the binary in some way, and we need to destroy it. That is all.
Gender doesn't exist. Goodbye.
Yes.
Right.
It's gone.
Watch that video anyway.
Yeah.
Watch that video.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a I find it strange, and the thing I can't get my head around is the idea when you hear the most ridiculous argument of, what if men come and dress as women and come into the toilets to assault our children? And you're like, okay, so what are we talking about here? We're talking about sexual assault and that very real fear. So what actually your problem is there is that you need to deal with masculinity and I just said it before, but like, and discuss that, but they're not willing to go into that discussion. That's not the headlines. The headline is this masked trans figure that's coming, get your kids, get your wife. Like, it's a made up monster because they're just women that or men that want to, or non-binary people that want to use whatever toilet they want to use.
Yeah.
It's a very, it harks back to like Flick was saying about how gay men were vilified and treated in the 1980s, how black people were described. It's this fear of different and this monster that's coming to get you and ruin your nuclear family values. That has never existed and doesn't exist. It's because you want to continue your control and policing over people's bodies because of a fear it's going to take something away from them. And I don't know what TERFs are afraid of losing, because they're fighting the completely wrong person. They're fighting their sisters and brothers and siblings.
When they should be fighting the patriarchy. And and I suppose it's an easier target in a way.
Exactly.
Because they have
access to it.
Where they've never had, trans people have never had power. They've never, like, for years, they've never had any rights. So it's easier to attack those people than it is to attack men, where this establishment, this society, it has been built by them for them. So it's but
I think that might even be a point that Contra Points made on that video, by the way. Exactly that.
But talking of like basic human rights, being able to self-identify on documentation is a huge thing that the government were going to discuss and promised that they would like change, and they never did. So I know Cyro has set up a petition, so if you want to just tell people about that and where they can find the link to sign and what it is for exactly.
Absolutely, yeah. So me and a group of other non-binary people and gender non-conforming people from Rebel Majesty created a petition called Help Us Claim Our Rights and Freedom to ID Our Own Genders. And it's a petition that we're hopefully going to get the attention of Liz Truss, who is a prick, but is the person in power that we need to get the attention of, to raise as many signatures as possible so we can have the right to document our own legal documents. So for instance, a friend, this kind of all started, it was a conversation always, but a friend, M, who's part of this, went to get a DBS check last year, and there is no option for a non-binary person, so they couldn't get this DBS check. I had to get a DBS check this year to run a trans youth group, and that's key because I had to misgender myself because I had to choose between running a trans youth group. I had to do this thing which I shouldn't have to do, and it's not a case of like, oh, you can say, oh, it's just misgendering yourself. No, it's on everything. It's on your banks, it's on your passport. So actually you're denying us any DBS checks, working with vulnerable or young people, access to leave the country because we can't have passports with our pronouns on. And there's so many countries in the world that have this in place, that you can document yourself. The only place I ever get asked where I feel it's like a legal thing is a sexual health clinic, is the only place I can actually put my pronouns. And it's so even now, like, I don't have any more details on it, but my bank details is Miss Leah. I was about to say my real name then, but like, there's a constant reminder, and there's no route where you can change those pronouns. So I've got Miss everywhere, and having to tick female, and that is not who I am.
I know it's really like, I suppose in the grand schemes, well, actually not in the grand scheme, it's a bit insignificant compared to like documentations of like legal documentations, but like when you're on a site buying something and you get to like the drop down menu and it gives you the options of like MX or all of these different gender neutral terms, makes me feel a little bit happy, and I'm like, oh, finally, like it's really nice.
It means you exist.
It's important. Yeah,
like and this is happening on a much larger scale than I think the world, like this country, realizes. So like the mental health impact of constantly being asked to misgender yourself or just not exist, ceasing to exist in that capacity of whatever documentation you're trying to get. Getting married, you can't even get married as a non-binary person. Like it feels medieval. It feels so ridiculous when you sit down and think about it. But I think as non-binary people, you just kind of go through life having to deal with this all the time. Your mental health is drained, you're exhausted, but we're saying enough is enough, and we need to change this now. So please, I think we could put maybe the link
put the link in the bios. Yeah,
amazing. Put the link in all the bios. Please sign, please share. We need as many people on this so we can actually get some movement for our basic human rights. We want to, I don't personally think I want to get married, but we want, people want to get married, people want to work, with children and vulnerable people. They want to contribute to society, be able to leave the country, and we just can't do that.
I just want to say quickly that gender neutral and third gender options are already available on legal documentation in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, Denmark, Iceland, the Netherlands, Malta, Nepal, India, Bangladesh, Argentina, Uruguay, and various US states. But that's it. So that is amazing. But there's still a long way to go. And there's definitely
Yeah.
still a long way to go, especially in this country. So definitely sign that
This fucking
petition.
country, there is.
Sign that petition and share it, because let's be.
We'll put it on our link tree.
Yes, we
Yeah.
will. Take a moment to breathe. We all hate the Tories. I ate my banana. You're welcome.
Well done.
So,
Congratulations.
so I've got my potassium in me. I can feel it through my veins. So yeah, so talking of history, quite recent LGBTQ plus, so a TikToker the other day used it as the alphabet mafia, and it's my new favorite thing now, because we're all part of the alphabet mafia. I love it. LGBTQ IAA, like the alphabet mafia. I was like, yes.
Yeah,
So part of so quite recent alphabet mafia history is section 28, which for anyone who doesn't know what section 28 is, essentially it was a government act put in well, let me find out when exactly. 1988 is when it came into and it's basically stopped like the teaching / promotion of non-traditional family values, aka anything queer, anything gay, lesbian, trans, wasn't allowed to be spoken about in schools, wasn't allowed to be taught on the syllabus. Only traditional family values, which is essentially cis straight people. Well, it is that's what it is. So something I didn't realize is when it got like taken out of law. So it was created and passed in 1988, and it was only taken out of law in 2003, which is
disgusting,
really shocking. So we were obviously all at school during that time. So yeah, I speak about it quite a lot, like with my friends and on my socials, about like the importance of education, and just educating children that there are other families, other types of people than the societal norms of cis and straight. And I think that's a huge importance, because we've spoken about it quite a lot, all of us, about the fact that like we were like maybe bullied or not bullied, but people definitely told us that we were queer before we even really knew what it was. And I remember being on the playground playing football, and being called it. So I never played football ever again. No, I hated football anyway. But I didn't know what it was for years. And then the only time I did realise was when I read Beautiful Thing by Jonathan Harvey. It's a play about two young boys. It's like a coming of age play, and they also fall in love. So that was the first time that I'd ever really like sort of experienced anybody that was different. And I think there's me personally, there's lots of like past like experiences, traumas, and like that I have to like work through myself. There was a lot of like internalized homophobia within myself for a very long period of time, and that all stems from the fact that I was never taught that I was normal, or never even spoken about. So therefore, if you're not spoken about and shown that you exist, then you grow up to feel like you are abnormal and should be hidden away. And that's really, really fucked up, and it does a lot of like damage to a person. So yeah, I think it's very important that we like have a chat about like different sorts of people in schools. What was your two's experience with, was there any education for you in on those sorts of topics at all?
God, no. I think the thing as well with the section 28 is that if you were getting bullied for being queer, the teacher couldn't do anything because they couldn't, it was seen as promoting. So there, you know, there's that added trauma of abuse running through it. I had nothing. There was nothing in schools. There was hardly any education on female anatomy, let alone queer, you know, if we're talking about sexual health. The only thing I learned about was there was a cartoon of a penis becoming erect. That's literally all we learned about, was that a man comes, and that was our education. So it was so centered around straight heteronormative sex, and the goal being to come. I didn't even know I had a second pee hole until I was 16, 17.
I never knew. I for a very long time didn't know that. I think it was embarrassingly long, like that. I think it was when we was at drama school that I actually found out that there was 2 types of holes.
Yeah. And like disclosing, like I'm disclosing this willingly to the audience, but I have a vagina, and I had it, and I didn't even know I had it because there's just no information. There wasn't even any information on, you know, menstruation. There was so much shame in female anatomy and pleasure that the idea of being queer wasn't even on the table. And I think that's like also another discussion, especially like lesbian romantic narratives. It's very much hidden because of laws and because of like the psyches, that it just doesn't exist. I think it was Queen Victoria that deemed like lesbianism to be like an atrocious, it just doesn't exist, it doesn't happen. So that's why it wasn't persecuted like gay men were persecuted, because they just didn't believe it existed. And if it did, it's an abomination, but that it just wasn't possible. So yeah, my experience in school, college, university included, there was no narratives around queer relationships, queer families, different people, like there just was no information. So it's taking like really the last couple of years to start educating myself properly about that, and doing shows like Fantabulosa, which is the drag show for kids who used queer stories from the Seeds educational program. Sorry, I'm going on a right long rant. But the Seeds educational program are stories that they were using in schools once Section 28 was gone, to promote inclusivity and diversity. They're literally stories about like a caterpillar, like, you know, these weren't insidious or adult in any way stories. And because we were doing it in Birmingham, we also had the backlash of the protests from mostly non-parents of children at the schools about promoting any kind of queer diverse stories to children. So there's still definitely the stigma and fear around their education from the I think people, because of the media and society, have equated queer people to have something to do with paedophilia, which is not the case. Because a lot of paedophiles are straight. So do I go around going, oh, straight man, you're a pedo? It's it's so ridiculous. But that's what the fear is, that somehow we're going to be damaging or dangerous to children. Like, we just exist like everyone else.
Something on that, like on the like protest when it was happening, something someone said, which was like, well, first of all, kids are inherently open-minded. Like they don't really see any difference in anybody, because they're all just want to play, and like they're all their friends. And it's so lovely. Like, I see that with my little 6-year-old nephew, who like is in love with Sam Smith and all of their music, and so much so that they had a conversation with my mum, his mum the other day, about the fact that Sam Smith isn't a girl or isn't a boy, and that they're a they. And then his mum had to educate herself on what that meant. And like she's being taught by a 6-year-old. So like, and he doesn't care. He loves the music. Like, so I think that it's keeping that open-mindedness and inclusivity. It's not about imposing these views and these agendas on people. And something that somebody said, and I'm paraphrasing on what they said because I can't remember the exact quote, but it was like, if you're looking at it as a religious context and we're imposing this gay agenda on children, you're imposing this like religious agenda and also this bigoted, like fearful agenda onto these children, and they don't have a choice. They have to go to church whenever your religious day is and worship a god. You're imposing that upon them. You're not giving them the choice. So like, you can't be like, well, you're not allowed to impose when you're also imposing something that is also, can be quite like traumatic for a person that is queer. I just think, people always want to concentrate on the sex of it, and it's not about the sex. It's about the inclusion of these people exist. Just letting them know. Cara, what about yourself?
It relates back to, I think, a lot of the whole thing of like, what you do in the bedroom is up to you, but I don't need my kids to see it. You know what I mean? That's what it's like. It's like but the reality is, being queer is not just who you have sex with.
Yeah.
It's how you present. It's who you fall in love with. It's who you marry. It's how you live your life, how you have your relationships, your friendships. It's everything. It's a lifestyle. It's who you are. It's not just a sexual preference. It's not a fetish. So it's important that, and I think it goes for everything else as well. Like in terms of sex and relationships in general, there should be a education there that covers relationships and different types of relationships. And, this should all be covered. In my experience, we had one sex ed lesson that I can remember, where we were taught about putting a condom on and stuff. And I remember the teacher taught, someone asked a question. The teacher didn't actually say it. It was, the question was asked by a student in the room who knew I was gay, and I think asked it to try and make me feel uncomfortable or something. But they asked, how do gay people get AIDS from anal sex? And the teacher told them, the class that anuses are not made to have things put up them. So when something goes up there, it bleeds, and that's how it gets in. It's like, there's like but
that's a science,
and that's all I had, really. It was like a PSHE lesson. I think they were even a fucking history or something. Do you know what I mean? It was like the one thing, and it was obviously like they got the short straw.
Yeah, PSHE
didn't want to do it.
PSHE teachers never used to like just teach that subject. It would always be like the RS or like some history teacher that just did not want to do it.
Yeah.
That's so dangerous.
Exactly.
That they've just told all that class. That's horrifying. And I bet, and I'm sure that some teachers are still doing it.
Well, yeah, because if you think about it, Section 28 I think hasn't like ended in 2003. There are still teachers that were teaching around those times that are in schools that have that mindset of, it shouldn't be spoken about, or it should be spoken about in that horrible way. Like, they're still there.
Well, thinking about it, this was probably 2000, and I would have been in 2009 probably. So in the grand scheme, that's not that long after it, after it ended, really. But I think I did spend a long time thinking that was the case, that, that things weren't supposed to go up there, but they went up there anyway.
And it was enjoyable.
Yeah. But I didn't have any education or anything. The only education I got, and I think a lot of queer people specifically get is from porn, which
Mhm.
is in itself not hugely healthy. And then it wasn't until I was like 18, 19 in uni that I started to teach myself about queer history. Even at my uni, there wasn't really anything about it. You'd have to go and, there was books in the library, you just need to go and read them yourself. It's like, there was no, we had modules, and my course was is a queer sort of performance art course, but there was never really a like imperative to learn about it. Like, it wasn't a core module or a core part of a module. Even it wasn't even one lesson about LGBT history, which to me seems bonkers when it's like a queer performance art course. But yeah, I learned it, and at the same time, in my second year of uni, I started volunteering for this LGBT youth group in East London, and I found myself being like, because I would ask them what they were taught in schools, and I remember thinking that they had more than I did or we did, but they still weren't learning really about LGBT history or relationships in any way, shape, or form. So I remember I put together like this PowerPoint presentation and taught them all about the Stonewall riots and things, and that was really fun. I think that there are lots of LGBT youth groups out there, and they really wanted to learn about it. That's the thing. Like, it's not like learn about the fucking Tudors and everyone's like, oh, which king's that? It's like, this is a really fun, interesting history to learn about.
Hey, the Tudors can be fun. The Tudors can be fun as well.
Oh,
Okay,
bloody hell, here we go.
I love the Tudors. Don't you come for my Anne Boleyn.
Sorry.
All right.
I forgot you're obsessed with the Tudors.
I am. There's lots of gay things happening in the Tudor times as well. We just never hear about it.
That's true. And they don't teach that in the schools, do they?
Well, no, they don't. A lot of history is hugely queer, but it's just straight washed. So you'll learn about what this person did, but you'll never learn about the fact that they were a queer person, and they're like a huge person within history.
I find it like with sex on TV, sex scenes, the stick that It's a Sin got, I finished watching it, by the way, pull my eyes out, of course. The stick that It's a Sin got for the sexual scenes, but Bridgerton being celebrated on the other hand, being like, oh, this is fantastic, like dirty little middle-aged mums fucking loving Bridgerton, but just being disgusted by It's a Sin. That's like a prime example of what this country's where our heads are at, because they clearly still have this same feeling about all the themes It's a Sin's talking about running through this country. The people are still here that were here in the 80s, I don't think they're as vocal, because I think they might feel like they'll be, in quotation marks, attacked if they're violently homophobic or transphobic. But it still runs deep, and especially with children, parents like will always like list off all the like, oh, I'm protecting my kids, it's my child, blah 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 blah. But like, in my head, religion has no place in school. No place. I'm here to learn facts and creativity, and religion doesn't have a place for that. But I was forced to pray every morning in like primary school, and all this bullshit. It's just so weird. Like, it might always makes me think of The Simpsons, like, think of the children.
Oh,
like,
God.
That's think of, like, and it means that we feel like we shouldn't be making any TV or books or education or groups for children, so that the queer community, why shouldn't we be engaged in children's theatre or whatever as much as straight people are? I think even we feel shut ourselves off from it, because we know that we'll get a backlash.
So when it comes to something I wanted to say, jumping off of that, is when it comes to the UK, in particular, and not just within schooling, but also just in our culture. I think there's like a sense of shame around sex that that we've living. And even like, so for instance, in Bridgerton, there's a scene where she masturbates and she self-pleasures. Now, that's one of the first scenes I've ever seen on television where it actually is like, it's like, you can like self-pleasure yourself. Like in like that is the only like one that I've seen that is like, that's not a comedy thing. Like, oh, he's masturbated or she's masturbating. And that's something that caused uproar with lots of people. Hello, Reese. Reese in the background there. But like, even that, like when we're taught in schools about sex, biological sex, of reproduction, that's all we're taught about. We're never even taught about the fact that you can self-pleasure yourself, and it's apart from the fact that like, oh, boys masturbate, that's it. Like, and I think if you've got that shame around it, like in a straight context, imagine what it's like for like queer people who have like it's and like even looking for that information. I remember looking for that information when I was at work experience. So what was it, year 10? I was working in in Burton's, and next door was WH Smith, and I went next door and bought an Attitude magazine, and like got all of like, and because I was searching for that information. The internet was around, but you had to dial up, and the family would have seen, so but I remember having that like magazine, and then going home with it, hiding it, and then I tried to get rid of it, and I tore it up, and I like scattered it around the fields, and I like burnt it because I was so like ashamed of it, and trying to like, even like that, trying to find so I just think like with everything when it comes to sex, there's loads of shame, but even more so with us queerdom. I don't know where I'm going with this point, but
that's such a like, don't want to say beautiful, but like harrowing image of like this teenager trying to burn an Attitude magazine and scattering, like that panic that you must have felt, and like probably so many other kids have done the same thing, that like, shameful, I have to push this deep down. As growing up female, I like to say that I knew how to like, without even being sexually active, by 11 I knew how to give a blowjob. Information about pleasuring a penis was widely available. Like masturbation, like when I was young, all the girls like would be like, oh no, I don't know, that's disgusting, that's dirty. Or oral sex on a vagina, it is disgusting, it's dirty. So it's like, you just don't do that. So there was so like,
when it's actually very clean, it's an organ that self cleans itself, whereas the penis is where pee comes out of, and boys are stinky, so it's actually the other way around.
Yeah, it's such a weird, the shame around vaginas is massive.
Mm.
And then if you're a queer person that has a vagina and you're having sex with other people with vaginas, like that's, you just don't even utter it, because it's not even, I don't think it's even joked about. I don't even remember it being really joked about. It was just like, it just doesn't exist. Don't be silly. Unless you're making out with a girl for the pleasure of a man. It was just all centered around phallic and penetrative sex. So like growing up, that's what I just assumed. Well, I just knew from what I was being told that that's what, unfortunately, felt like that's what I was good for. That was like my use. Like the end goal of any sex was for a man to come, which is so dangerous.
Yeah. There's definitely something there. I don't know about you two in terms of the shame, but like I found myself terrified of having sex, and still do in some respects. Like I don't, it's something that still affects me now. It hasn't gone away. It will probably stay with me for my whole life. That feeling of shame and for many manifests as like you know, oh well, when you go there you have this freedom and you can like sleep with who you want and whatever, which has its own downfalls. But for me it's manifested as the opposite, where I'm like still even today find myself like terrified to expose myself to another person or share my body in that way. It feels like such a big deal to me still. Even all these years later, I'm like a little teenager where it's like it like that feels it, and it's not really a big deal. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be just something, you know. It's yes, it can be lovely and passionate and special, but it can also just be quite throwaway. And that's something that I'm really having to learn, I'm finding as I'm getting older, so that I can understand how other people see it. Because it's all linked in with slut shaming and, you know, all of it's in there.
The straights must be very jealous as well, because like their sex is completely based around procreation, whereas our sex is based around pleasure. Like, how dare you have sex for, how dare, look at these disgusting people enjoying their lives. Like, when I was dating straight men, like I truly honestly believed, and this is to a very old, like into my 20s, that sex is something that was just done to you, like as a, when I was living as a woman, like it just was done to you, which is so horrible. And it did make you feel like trash. Like someone was just going to come in you and then you clean yourself up, and it's gross. It's so it makes me cringe. I'm like, you would but there's, so now I have that, I can relate to you, Carrot, that kind of shame around still being worried about showing myself, or like feeling free my body to just, you know, do what I like. There's still like a lot of fear, because I feel in experience, because I've spent so much of my life lying, that I feel like I'm too late. Like I'm like, oh, I missed it. How am I going to catch up? We shouldn't have to feel, but I think unless you're brought up in a family that's really queer positive and supportive, and you're getting that education, and you have that, which maybe some Gen Z, is it Gen Z? Maybe they do have that confidence, some of them. I hope so, but that's very unlikely. And so you always feel like you're catching up on something. You feel like you're trying to get lost time, and that never comes back. So you've got this, like, there's this thing of loss around everything. It's like a loss of a childhood, loss of a life, loss of a love.
Lost opportunities, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And it's the not having the privilege that perhaps you would have if you were just heteronormative person.
If you were a boring hetero.
How many like parents go, is that your girlfriend, is that your boyfriend, to kids? Like, talk about sexualizing kids, like 3-year-olds, and you're saying, oh, that's your girlfriend, that's your
this is Timmy. He's 3. He's a real ladies' man. He's not. He's free. He still knows himself. Like,
he's probably gay.
Oh God, Timmy, it's okay.
But then they're like, don't sexualize that child by even mentioning the word queer or gay. Like,
yeah. Basically, just talk about us like we're normal people, because we are. That's it. At the end of the day, just let little Timmy know that we exist. I've had my banana and my crumpets, but I've got room for more.
Snack time. Snack time. Snack time. Snack
time. I'll go first. My schnackety schnack, is a person who actually lives. Lovely, thank you. Who lives in LA, and doesn't know that I exist, but I enjoy them. It's Dexter Mayfield. Their Instagram handle is Dexrated, so DEXRATED. And they're just amazing. It's I think, yeah, he is a cis guy. So he is a dancer. He's a big dancer as well, and he is fabulous. He's a black guy from LA, and just all of his videos just give me absolute life. They're so like, you know, when you see somebody like dancing around and being joyous, and it just infects you with all of this like happiness and positivity. But then the fact that they're an amazing dancer as well, and obviously they're like very body positive. They were in the Taylor Swift video, you know, the one where she had all of the like queer people in. They were in that. He was in that as well. So yeah, just check him out and go and enjoy his feed. It will make you very happy. He's a very positive person, and I think that we need that right now.
So my snack is Cramps. Their Insta handle is Cramps. No, I'm just going kill. No, it's Cramps. Cramps is CRAMPS _kill the vibe. But it just says Cramps underneath it, and they are a performance artist, drag, musician, vocalist. They explore Jewish trans narratives. They're incredible and so fit. Their most recent video is one of their tongue, and I would encourage you to look at it. Let's hope they don't listen to this podcast, because basically just stating how much I like
well,
them.
we know what Cyro's been doing in lockdown.
They taught on the drag course I did at Soho Theatre, and they taught the makeup lesson on that, and they chose me as like the person to draw on, and the whole time I was just like trying to concentrate on my breath, and I was like it was so intense. But their videos are great. There's also one with a dildo that's lovely. Just go check them out. Incredible art, political, Jewish, beautiful, incredible.
Well, I know what I'm doing this afternoon.
I love them.
Hot bothered snack.
Today, mine is someone that everyone should be following on Instagram, and the handle is "Hello, my name is Wednesday," and the artist is called Wednesday Holmes, and they are a queer trans illustrator. They are gorgeous, and the illustrations they do are so cool and cute and stuff that you need to look at them and check them out. And they all say like colorful queer things, and they're just very fun. And they do these like little animations which are health check-ins, and it's like they're just really cute little images, and it says like unclench your jaw, take a breath, remember to take your medication. It's just cute things like that. It's like things that you need on your feed. Do you know what I mean? Occasionally, amongst everyone's like being narcissistic and like whatever, you need someone or something in there with just nice, pretty, colorful pictures with good messages by a queer person. And they have a Redbubble, and they have a Teespring site and stuff, and you can buy loads of merch with like, I've just bought this jumper that says queer power in like big colorful writing on the front of it, so I'm very excited for that to arrive. So check them out. Hello, my name is Wednesday.
I think we should all get that jumper and all have them in different colors. So they do them in different colors. No,
they only do it in black and white, but the colors are on the front, so that's fine.
That's like not a phase. I love their logo because it's so colourful, and it really does.
Yeah,
it gets when I wore it downstairs. All of my family were like, "Oh, that's lovely," and then actually, like when I read it, it was like, "Oh, so good." You need to read it. You need to read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, give Not a Phase a follow as well. They're an amazing organisation. An organisation. I can't even speak. What's wrong with me? Wow. Snacks. Go follow those snacks. Also follow us on Instagram. can follow me, well, on Instagram, TikTok now, or Twitter at Flick the Drag Queen.
Follow me at Cyro Drag Thing, or if you want to be cheeky and slide into my personal DMs, it's at Leah S. Kirby.
Ooh, hello.
Ooh. Oh. You can follow me at Carrot Drag on.
That's Carrot Drag on everything.
There you go. Thank you. I cut back and it was you saying what I just said, but I said it to myself.
You did. It's all right. Follow
Yeah.
you probably already follow us on Instagram, but go check out our YouTube, We Three Queers. Give us a like and subscribe and share with all of your friends, especially the breeders, because well, they need to be better allies and listen to us.
They need to be educated.
Educate them. Well, anyway, yeah, I'm gonna go practice self-love.
I'm gonna go watch that Tony video.
Self-love, Carrot.
And I'm gonna go practice self-hate.
Great. Bye.
Bye.
See you later.
We three queers of London are fabulous and feeling ourselves so far. Talking about all things queer and fitting with the theme. And that's enough of that, I'll stop singing now.